Hello, and welcome back to the Scrollies podcast. It is I, Sqat Cobblr, and I am joined today, as always, by my co-host.
What's up? It's Ratnado from twitch.tv/Team Ratnado.
How's it going, everyone? Today we're coming at you with a bit of a controversial topic, perhaps? But before we get into that, let us tell you a little bit about what we've been playing lately. I, just the other day, last week, played Metroid Dread for the fourth full playthrough, and I've unlocked Dread mode, finished my hard mode run, and actually got a time under my best normal mode run, so that's pretty hype. I don't know if I'm going to be playing Dread mode right off the bat, but I've unlocked all the artwork for speediness, so I'm pretty happy with that. Alright, Nato, how about yourself?
For myself, I'm back on the Pixel remaster, trying to get it done. I've still got to finish up 4 and 6, so I've been doing a little grinding, prepare for that. And, by the time you hear this, who knows, maybe I'll be done with them. I got to get those out of the way before I can really, really dig into Stranger of Paradise. So, I've been playing that a little bit too. I'm kind of just all over the place. It's kind of what's going on.
Now, without any more Final Fantasy remakes to be looking forward to, I guess you're just back to hoping that Square Enix will grant you an advance copy of Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2.
That's the whole reason I'm streaming now. Listen, if anybody knows anybody at Square Enix, please, I'm begging you.
We're asking you nicely, folks. This is the whole purpose behind the Team Ratnado Twitch channel. If it doesn't happen, I don't know if he'll keep streaming. I'm just gonna be honest. So we need to reach out to the people we know. See if we got any ins over at Square and make this happen.
Hey, let's get it trending. Hashtag Ratmake Part 2.
All right, Rat. So we're talking about remakes. We're talking about going back a little to retro consoles. Final Fantasy came out NES, SNES, PlayStation 2. What is that the end? Is that the end of retro? No, wait. PlayStation 3, Xbox 360. Do these qualify? Was that a good in? I don't know, but that's what we're going with. Yeah, we're talking the 7th generation consoles, PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, Nintendo Wii, sort of, kind of. Are these considered to be retro? And if so, why? If not, then what bars them? We'll get into it, folks.
Well, Sqat Cobblr, you know what? You listed a bunch of things there, but unfortunately to me, those are all just consoles?
Yeah, what? Are you saying that there's something that I forgot to include?
I am saying there's something you forgot to include, and it might be the best thing you've ever heard of. In fact, if you don't have one, what are you doing with yourself? It's cheaper, it's better.
I like Genesis, and it costs a lot less.
We kid, that game
I'll
there.
take Sonic and Genesis.
I knew that.
Sonic the Hedgehog. More action, more speed. Sega Genesis, it's a whole lot more for less.
Of course I'm talking about the Sega Genesis. Sqat, come on.
How could I forget the ever-consistent line of consoles, the Master System, the Genesis, the Saturn? No, 32X. No,
yeah.
CD. Yeah, they're all Sega, guys. Sega, check it out. Sega does what Nintendo don't.
And all of their adoring fan. Shout out Plaidman86.
And Sega Gamer.
And Sega Gamer. Oh, 2 of them.
AKA Plaid Girl 80 something.
So, Sqat, you want me to believe these games that defined my college time, the Wii, the PS3, and the Xbox 360, you're trying to convince me that those are retro?
I know it sounds hard to believe. I hardly want to admit it myself, but I think by all metrics, they are considered retro consoles now. This shout out Samsonite D. This topic of conversation came out the other week when he was playing Simpsons, the game. It seemed pretty split whether or not these consoles were considered to be retro.
Wait a second, Sqat Cobblr. Is that the Samsonite D? The DK Revolutionary?
DK Revolutionist himself. He answered the call along with Sheriff McLawdog on our episode on the DK games.
Yeah, there's also some rumors that Samsonite D guy kind of looks like Tuxedo Mask, but baseless claims from what I've heard.
I'm not saying that you should take a tuxedo hat and white mask and place it onto Samsonite D's face, but if you were to do so, you might notice some strong similarities between him and the Sailor Moon character.
Huh. Food for thought.
A little suspicious, perhaps, but we're not going to make any claims here.
Sqat Cobbler, my freshman year, I remember I bought a scalped Wii. How is that retro? I was in college. That was my prime, and I'm not old.
I know you don't want to think you are. And I myself remember very vividly seeing the Toys R Us TVs display this fancy new remote control that's actually a video game controller. And you could swing it around, and you could play tennis like you're actually playing tennis. Yes, folks, we were both there when the Wii dropped, when the 360 dropped, when the PS3 dropped. And it definitely seems like a new era. All of these consoles were HD, except for the Wii, but that's just because Nintendo does what Nintendo does. These systems, they were many times more powerful than what came before. The games on them were even taking advantage of this and giving us bigger worlds, more detailed worlds, and online wasn't a feature. It was just included as a base aspect of these consoles. So, with all these things in mind, you'd think, well, of course they're not retro. I mean, just think about them. They came out 15 plus years ago, and also, they're HD and they're online, but, is there some kind of standard we can go off of and say maybe they are? I think there is, everyone. Let's get into it.
All right, Sqat Cobbler, you're going to have to tell me, because to me, I don't know what the criteria is, but I like what you're saying. I like what you're peddling here.
Well, let's go back in time a little bit, everyone. It's the mid-aughts. You got your fancy new plasma screen TV. You got 2 HDMI hookups on it. You're going to get one of these fancy new systems and plug it in. At that time, what would you consider to be retro, Ratnado?
What systems I would consider retro? I mean, obviously, Super Nintendo, to me, the jump from 16-bit up to 3D and all that kind of stuff to me is like a major moment. But I guess I would consider most Nintendo 64, PlayStation 1, a lot of PC games from that era are kind of retro.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, I'd say absolutely now. At the time, I don't think it was too big of a claim to say, hey, 5th gen consoles, PlayStation and 64, those are retro as well. Just doing a little bit of basic math, that was only 10 years before the PS3, Xbox 360 came out. It is now over 15 years since the PS3, Xbox 360 came out. So if you're going off of just sheer numbers, folks, just timeline, then it is well old enough at this point to be considered retro based on our standards back then.
Dude, that's kind of crazy. I gotta know, what is the argument that somebody crazy, obviously, that it wasn't retro? Or are you gonna get into that? Am I stepping on your toes, Sqat Cobbler?
No, not at all. My toes are curled in so they can't be stepped on. I don't want to claim anyone's in denial. I don't think that's fair, nor my place. But I think there's just something about thinking back to saying, I was such and such years old, so it can't be that long ago. It can't be. So it may have been so many years, but we're well more into a more mature time of gaming, and we can maybe broaden that span of time a bit. So yeah, not retro. And also it's HD.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing to think it's HD is. I mean, it's changed. That's just the way everything is now.
That's the way everything is now. You're never gonna find a sub HD system. You might be going a little below 1080p to keep up those frame rates, but you're not gonna be having to worry about dropping below 720 or God forbid 480p. So there you go. HD consoles, they can't be retro, right? Well, what if I told you retro games now are, for the most part, played in HD?
True.
Whether through emulation or through official means, these games, I mean, you're not just playing them in SD anymore. They're upscaled, they're remastered. So I don't know if saying that HD determines retro holds much water. I think if we want to go back to what you were saying, a huge moment, the transition from 2D to 3D. I'd say that was very much a far bigger distinction between what could be retro and what could be modern. But
right.
Could it be that now, that point in time, the transition from SD to HD, from your analog yellow, white, and red plugs to your HDMI, could it be that that is now far enough back that that isn't the new, shiny, fancy, modern distinction that it once was? Perhaps.
That's a fair point.
Now, last but not least, online. These games, or these systems would all play online. Through your Wi-Fi, through your Ethernet. That wasn't a standard before the 7th generation of consoles. You might have had a few of your PS2 games that had some servers set up, and the Xbox always prided itself on being capable of playing online. And even the GameCube, surprisingly enough, had a few, keyword few, offerings on the internet. There's actually a controller that has a keyboard on it.
Oh, man.
It's a real funny looking thing. Look it up, everyone. It's a GameCube controller with a keyboard just smack in the middle of it, and it was for Phantasy Star Online 2.
Dude, Phantasy Star Online, I wanted to play that game so bad, and I wanted that controller so bad, because we didn't have voice chat. Well, not good voice chat.
No. But, hey, online, it became a mainstay. It became a standard with the 7th generation of consoles. So you'd think, hey, this is the deciding point, This is what determines whether something's retro, whether something's modern. However, I dare you to look even further back than the 3D era. I tell you to look back before AOL to PC gaming.
I don't want to Sqat.
You have to.
I don't want to look back that far.
Look back that far to PC gaming. Very much a retro era, but there was online capabilities even back then. We're talking Warcraft's BattleNet.
Oh my gosh, yes. All right, okay. You know what? Actually, I'm okay with it. Now that I'm here, I feel really comfortable.
I think we've reached a point, everyone, where we're willing to maybe say, hey, just because these standards apply to quote unquote modern systems doesn't mean that means that the retro standard can also apply to them. We're also 2 generations ahead of these systems now. The Xbox Series X, the PS5 are out. They're here, and that's the next big thing. We're entering a 4K era. So perhaps we could say, yeah, these 7th gen games, they are retro.
I guess the question I have, and as you're talking about this, I can see in chat how everyone's getting really passionate about this. Maybe not even something they believe in. Maybe it is something that they feel to their core, feel to their souls. But my question is, are there actually some real distinctions that make retro definable and important that it's defined? Do you think that's really important?
I think it is important because retro is a big category, on Twitch, on the YouTube. A lot of people, exploring this era as it continues to extend further and further into the timeline. I think regardless of where we want to draw the endpoint, it is important to understand that maybe something reaches a point in age that it can be considered retro, because that then opens up the doorway to new fans. People who, may not give something a second glance because it's old will say, oh, well, hey, it's old, but it's got this air of distinction to it now because it's, it's part of this retro bubble.
Yeah.
And, I can maybe look past the old game jank now because it's an old game, We can appreciate it for what it was, even if in the time it was just bad.
Donkey Kong 64.
I didn't want to say it. But it definitely is easier to swallow when you understand the fact it's old game. It's an old game with jank.
Sqat, we've kind of talked about this, but where do you personally draw that line?
Personally, I used to do this series called Throwback Thursday on Twitch. And I would always draw the line 10 years ago. I drew that line so that I could celebrate the 10th anniversary of Donkey Kong Country Returns and Skyrim, and others as we continue into the 2010s. I don't think the 2010s are quite in the retro era just yet, but maybe in 5 years I'll have to have this conversation with myself and say, oh, maybe they are.
Yeah.
I think I think once we get beyond one generation ago, so the PS4, Xbox One, Wii U, those aren't retro yet. But I think once the next set of systems comes out after the ones we're currently enjoying or watching the eBay prices go up and up for and not enjoying,
yeah,
I think I think that's a pretty good distinction to say, hey, once something gets to the point where it's been succeeded and then its successor has been succeeded, maybe you can start making the claim that it's retro.
Coming into this, I really don't feel like I had a dog in this fight, but now I think that I do. And totally, like, not just doing this just to have some back and forth here, but I think I might disagree.
Ooh.
I don't think it's time-based.
You don't think it's time-based? Okay.
I think it's era. I do think it might be era. And the reasoning being is that it's kind of like Citizen Kane. Okay? And I know everyone always makes this. What comes after that doesn't look like what was before it, right? And I think I might even agree that PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 were that huge jump forward. And even though there's been all these changes, we're up to 4K, we have all these, different things that we're doing, people are going digital, that all is possible. And we haven't seen, at least hardware-wise, that much of a change in our consoles since that point.
Okay. I can understand that.
They're different sizes, they have more memory, but they're still using Ethernet cables. And I think to me, there is something really like, when I say retro, when I think of retro, I really do think of pixels, 16-bit. And I think even N64 kind of gets there in that way because, like you said, the connections, it wasn't a standard up until then. And to bring back that Citizen Kane analogy, similar, after that PS3 and Xbox 360 came out, things just looked kind of the same. And that's what I thought of when you mentioned even the future. Dude, the year is 2032. Charles Prime is president. And he goes by President Charles Prime. And we're on PS7, PS6, whatever it is. What are the big differences going to be?
I hate to say it, but I think the next step forward, everyone wants it to be VR. I think everyone wants it to be VR, for VR to be adopted as a standard. I'm sorry to say, everyone, I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's too cumbersome for the average person to hook up an entire VR setup and wander around their room with goggles on. Not hating. I may have gotten a headache the few times I've played VR, but I'm not saying this because I'm against it. I'm saying it because I think people are going to go with what they know over something brand new. So I think, unfortunately, the next big step is going to be streaming. I think that we're going to have these stream boxes that will play your game, quote unquote, through broadcasting onto your TV. But I think that what's actually going to be running it is going to be in some server farm somewhere far away.
Yeah.
Now, at that point, I'll say we've entered a new enough era that maybe we can apply a whole different term to what's come since the 7th generation consoles. Because, like you said, consistent hardware-wise, I'd say, retro. Maybe we're bringing that term too far forward, and we should have left it pre-3D. But a leap has to happen at some point that makes us look back and say, okay, yeah, maybe at the time there was a distinction, but it's old enough now where we got to class it with, what came before. I don't know. There might even be something to me. Also, retro kind of feels like a protective shield around some things to like, this isn't good. You're Bubsy 3D, but it's retro. That doesn't make it good though. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if I quite agree with that. I think, like you said, it's an era, I don't know if it's a standard of quality.
But I mean, I
there's
feel like
some
that's used a lot, though.
I feel like maybe as a cushion against criticism, but I don't know. I don't know if people say retro, they mean bad.
No, definitely. But what I'm, yeah, that's not what I'm trying to say. I think what I'm trying to say is that, especially for like the category, it doesn't really have, it doesn't have this definition that we're giving it in any way. Like I've seen people like you've even done Throwback Thursday for Red Dead Redemption. Yeah.
Red Dead Redemption 1, yeah. Came out 2010.
2010, 10 years, more than 10 years ago. And I'm okay with that. I think I'm okay with calling that retro, but I don't know.
It's definitely a weird middle ground where I think there's arguments being made in both aspects for or against the moniker.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, I mean, we're only growing further and further away from these systems. And the farther away we get, the more it's going to... I mean, at this point, hey, there are teenagers alive now in high school that were born after the PS3 and Xbox 360 came out.
Oh my goodness.
What do they think of these systems? What does the Scorpion Medusas out there think when you say, "Oh, I'm playing retro"? You know, do they think, "Oh, he's playing the games that were out when I was a kid," or no, playing stuff that came out 10 years before I was born? I don't know. That's something we'd have to ask the youth, and we're out of touch with the youth.
When your kid cousin asks, "You've played a PlayStation 3 before?" Oh my.
It's gonna start becoming more and more prevalent, everyone. Just get ready. Brace yourselves. The sands of time continue to shift along.
What happened in Sam's chat? Did they agree or did they disagree? What did they come to any sort of consensus?
They very much disagreed. I would shout out some names, but I can't quite remember who was all involved, and I don't want to apply any stances to anyone that I'm not sure about. But there was definitely an air of, oh, it's too recent to be considered retro. Hey, there's a cutoff point after yada yada yada. Sam chiding in with a few of his thoughts.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I haven't really considered much about retro, and I mean, and that's the thing is, to me it's a category on Twitch, for example, for something that's not even really necessary. I know I see that a lot. A streamer will say, "Hey, I'm doing retro today," but they're playing a specific game, and I wonder, like, what is the purpose of that? Because for me, when I play a retro game, it's like, oh yeah, this is game. Check it out. Anybody who wants to see this game, I want you to come and talk to me about it. I want to make sure this is in the category.
I agree with you there. I think if I want to find an old game specifically, I'll look up the actual name of it instead of the retro tag, because it's so collective of so much, and people may not even be applying it right. But I think the people looking for retro content in that category specifically are more just looking for maybe some sense of nostalgia for just an era, like you were saying. They don't particularly care what it is. They just kind of want the warm fuzzies that it brings.
Oh man, that's so true. And the thing you said earlier about HD, everything is played in HD, that got me, because now there's so many different games. I just did a limited run games order for Zombies Ate My Neighbor, which we talked about in July of last year, and it's now being sent out, and I'm like really hyped for it.
Wow. Way to go, limited run games, on getting that quick turnaround.
Calling you out, limited run games. And I'm really excited for it, but I guess they've upscaled it a little bit. They have to have done something to it, but I'm still just as happy to play it on the Super Nintendo.
Oh yeah. And I definitely think with old hardware, you get that certain grain, that certain grit that comes with it, and that gives its own feeling. But these games, as they stand on their own, I mean, most people are playing them on what they have now, readily available, not on what they existed on back then. Just because, I mean, we're talking finite number of copies and hardware that is currently in the process of breaking down one by one. So we're getting into a little emulation talk right now, but,
which we do not condone officially.
All that being said, the retro moniker I think it applies to these titles more than it applies on the way you play them.
Yeah, which I think that's fine. I think that makes sense. I think eventually maybe it's just when it looks so outdated, there comes a point that it's just so outdated because, like you said, we shouldn't pull out Super Nintendo or the Genesis era, that whole pixel era. Maybe that should have been retro. Everything from that point and beyond or behind should have been retro, and everything forward isn't, because there's easy distinctions to make there. But yeah, N64 games to me, PlayStation 1 games to me are retro. 100%. There's no way to not consider them retro.
I think it would be easier if we had different terms for the 2D era, for the early 3D era, for the HD era, but because we kind of have this one word retro that defines everything old, you would expect to be brought forward more and more as time goes on, but it's being held at a point, and I think that's where it gets kind of dicey. But hey, maybe as Gen Z comes up and claims their place as the official designators of all that is old and boomerish, our opinion won't matter anymore.
Yeah, it's gonna happen eventually, but luckily we still got a few more years, right?
Still got a few more years. I'm seeing my childhood being milked before my eyes, and I'm all here for it for the time that it's lasting.
Yo, Sonic 2, I'm hyped. I'm super hyped to see it. So they're starting to do us actually some favors with the hype, the looking back at the retro games that we liked, and I've always waited that ever since I started seeing the 80s throwback stuff. So
the time will come that it's cool and nostalgic to be referencing all the early and mid 2000s games that you all enjoyed in high school. So get ready, your time's coming, and then it will pass like it has everyone else.
Oh man!
So enjoy it while it's there. All right. Well, I don't know if we quite came to a consensus tonight, everyone, but thank you for joining us. Let us know your thoughts. Where would you draw a distinction? Whether something's retro, whether it's on that fine line, and if it still you consider it modern or not. Let us know on the Team Ratnado Discord, Scrolly's channel. I've been Sqat Cobblr. I've been joined by Team Ratnado.
Howdy, it's me. You can find me at twitch.tv/Team Ratnado. Come check me out. We'll have a good time.
And we'll be looking forward to seeing you guys again real soon. See ya.
Bye.